One of my most frequently requested videos lately is to compare the Colbor CL60 to the Amaran 60x and the Zhiyun G60. And it's an interesting question because they are all 60-watt lights. In specifications, they are all very, very similar. But once you start to use them, you find out that they are actually significantly different lights. And one of these lights might really suit you better than another. Now, in full disclosure, this video is sponsored by Colbor. After seeing a few of my other lighting videos, they asked if I would compare this light to these other two lights, the same thing that everybody else has been asking for. And I think that's because they knew that their light was a little bit cheaper and would probably sort of measure up reasonably well. But they've had no say in the making the video, and everything you're going to see is my unbiased opinion as well as real-world results comparing these three lights. The first thing I want to look at is the brightness of these lights. And in the past, all three of these were 60-watt lights. But Amaran has just re-released their model as the 60xs, and it's actually a 65-watt light. So we're comparing a 65-watt light to two 60-watt lights. Wattage doesn't actually tell you how bright the light is. It only tells you how much wattage it's using. So I've gone through, I've created a table. The first test I've done, which I think is probably the best representation of how much light that you're getting out of these units, is I've done a bare bulb test up against a wall. So I've put them all a meter away. I've measured 1 meter to the chip itself, and I've ran them at full brightness, and I've done so at a number of different color temperatures. And so I'll just throw that up on screen now. And what you're actually going to see is in the bare bulb test, the 65-watt light, the Amaran light, is a little bit brighter. It's sort of about 7% brighter in general across the whole spectrum than the Colbor light, and it's about 13% brighter or thereabouts across the whole spectrum than the Zhiyun light. Now, the next test I did was a softbox brightness test, and I took a 90-centimeter softbox. I put the edge of the softbox a meter from the wall, so now we're getting much further away. We've also got double diffusion in that softbox, and what we're finding is kind of a very similar story. The Amaran is a little bit, probably about 7% brighter than the Colbor, and it's about sort of 13% or thereabout brighter than the Zhiyun. The next thing I should warn you about when it comes to brightness is a lot of these manufacturers, and in some YouTube videos, you'll see people quoting the brightness with their reflectors on. And that's really mostly going to tell you about how concentrated the light is coming out of the reflector. It's not going to tell you much about the brightness of the lights themselves. And this is a little deceptive trick that the manufacturers do to make it look like their lights are brighter or quote a brighter number. But the more concentrated the light is, for me, the less usable it is. And across the three of these, the Amaran with its reflector on was 52,000 lux. The Colbor CL60 was 28,000 lux. And the Zhiyun G60 is 13,500 lux. And based on the patterns that they projected, the brightness is absolutely the inverse order of how useful I think these reflectors are. So the G60 projects a nice even light pattern, which I think you could totally use in a number of situations as a direct light, but it obviously concentrates the light the less, so it gets the least reading. The Colbor has a little bit of a hot spot, but it's not nearly as bad as the Amaran. And so in order of how good I think the reflectors are, it's the opposite of how bright they make the light. So just be aware of that, because it is like a little manufacturing trick that they're doing. And for the most part, I think the Amaran reflector is almost totally unusable. And I actually will put a link in the description down below to a Bowens mount reflector. It costs $12, and it gives you a really nice, big, even light pattern. So I think with any of these, if you're using them with a Bowens mount reflector, I'd actually recommend that one over the ones that come in the kit, because I think it's going to give you a much nicer, more usable light. The next thing we need to discuss is how bright do these lights need to be for your own particular use case. And if you're in a situation like me where you're just shooting indoor interviews, or you're shooting a YouTube setup like this, and you have the ability to close your blinds and control the light, you're not competing with other light or outside lights, all of these lights are going to be more than good enough. And in fact, when I've used these type of lights or 60-watt lights in the past for my own YouTube setups, most of the time I wasn't using them more than sort of 10 to 30% brightness anyway. So they were all more than bright enough. So I don't think the brightness is the determining factor, but I know it is a big one that people look at on YouTube. So now you've got the information about the brightness. The next thing I want to look at is the build quality. And this is where the Colbor really surprised me because it's an all metal body. It's the cheapest by about 25%, but it's got an all metal enclosed casing. So by far, when you take it out and you put it in your hand, this definitely feels like the most well-built of the three, where the other two are fully plastic. Now, there is one feature on this, or lack of feature, that I don't like, and that is over the LED chip. You don't have a glass protective coating or a glass layer. If you touch it, you are just touching the chip directly. I do have two other lights that are like this. I don't know if it's a problem in the long term. I haven't had problems with my other lights that do have this, but it just seems logical to me that it would be nice to have some protection. And both of these other two lights do have a glass layer over the top. Now, when we look at the build on these other two, they're both all plastic. They feel reasonably robust. The buttons and knobs are fine on the Amaran. I don't have any problems with the build on this, but it is plastic compared to metal. The Zhiyun light, I think, from a look and feel, and the body of it feels just as good as the Amaran, but the knobs do feel a little bit lightweight, and they're probably the one place that I could potentially see there being a problem in the long term. Now, I've had this a number of months. I use it daily, and I have not yet had a problem, but it is the one place that compared to the other, the knobs just don't feel sort of quite as robust as the other two. Now, all of these lights are designed to be portable for travel use, and they do that in different ways and with different levels of success. And by far, if you are traveling, you will see the little G60 is fantastic, and it's so small. And even compared to the Colbor, which is reasonably small, you could almost fit two of them in the space that you would fit one Colbor. You would definitely fit two of them in the space that you would fit one Amaran. So if it is a situation where you're going to be traveling a lot, and that is the purpose of this light, you're wanting a small portable light for travel, this is gonna fit in the space that just as sort of a really small prime lens or a nifty 50 might fit in your camera bag. It is by far the smallest and most portable of the three. And when I travel, this does tend to be the light that I bring around with me just purely because of the size. The other thing when it comes to travel is we need to talk about how you're going to supply the power. Now, all three of these come with power supplies. So if you're going to plug them into wall, you've got those power supplies. The one thing that the Zhiyun light and the Colbor light have is they have the ability to power the lights via power delivery USB-C. So they both have USB-C plugs on them. Now that means that if you are taking these lights and you have a MacBook or something that uses a power delivery USB-C device, then all you need to do to power these is bring that along with a USB-C to USB-C cable. And this is what I've been doing. And honestly, this is kind of a massive thing. And you can get these USB-C cables that are really, really long as well. So what I've been doing is I've just been bringing my laptop charger along with me. And then I bring either of these. Generally, I bring the Zhiyun because it is the smallest one. And I just bring a long cable for the power delivery charger. And then I just unplug my notebook or laptop while I'm actually shooting a video or using the light, and I use that. That saves me from bringing sort of the entire power brick that you normally would have to bring for a light like this. It also allows you, because they're both USB-C, you can power them over power delivery from a USB-C power bank. Now, it depends on how much power that power bank can deliver to determine how much brightness you're getting out of the lights when you're using that, but it is an option that you're not getting on the Amaran light. Now, the other thing that you are getting on the Amaran light that you aren't on these two, and it comes in the kit for travel, is you are getting this adapter that allows you to put two Sony NPF batteries and run the camera off that. So if you've got a bunch of Sony NPF batteries in the kit, you're going to get this. This is still making the setup a little bit bigger, but it does sort of keep it contained, so you can put it on a light stand, a small light stand or something portable, and move it around, and it's all in one. You don't have to worry about sort of a power bank hanging off the back like you have with these two. So it does hit back with that sort of little feature, but in general, for portability, I'm definitely preferring the Colbor and the Zhiyun, and the Zhiyun, just purely because of the small size, I think is the winner in portability. The next thing we need to look at is the mount. Now, the Amaran light comes with a built-in Bowens mount, and as you can see, that light is quite wide, much wider than the other two, and that is because it accommodates the ability built right into it without adding any accessories to hook up any Bowens softbox or accessory to the light. This is really a nice feature, and it means you don't have to worry about an adapter or adding anything to it. The Colbor light in the kit comes with this adapter, and this is kind of nice because it allows you to make the unit smaller to pack down for travel and moving around, but it still allows you to add a Bowens mount softbox to it. It just clicks in place. And to be honest, when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, how well is that going to do? Is that going to be able to hold like a 90 centimeter softbox and not fall off? And actually, it does it fine. I haven't tested it with like a big 120 centimeter softbox, but definitely with a 90 centimeter, it had no problems at all. So I was impressed with how well that worked. And I think it is a pretty good implementation, and it is pretty simple to come on and off. Now, when we look at the Zhiyun light, we actually have first of all, the Zhiyun light comes with its own proprietary mount, which it has a couple of accessories for it, and you get a small reflector in the kit like this. So once again, this reflector is much smaller than the reflector that comes with the other two. So if we're going to use bounced light and we're keeping it small, the Zhiyun is a winner by a mile. But if you are going to use a softbox or some sort of Bowens mount accessory, now all of a sudden you have to use an adapter, and the adapter is separate, and it generally, the best way to buy the adapter is buy it in a kit. Now you've added an extra $50 to get the adapter, but you do get some other accessories in that kit as well. But this is also starting to defeat the purpose of this light being so small. So once you start adding this and you're adding soft boxes and stuff, I think the fact that the light is small becomes a lot less relevant. And it really is better if you use it with the Zhiyun accessories, which are made for the mount, or if you use it with the reflector that comes in the kit. Now, if we have a look at the prices in their default configuration, the Colbor light is $149 and the other two are $199. So you're already sort of 25% less on the Colbor light. The other thing you have to consider is with the Colbor light and the Amaran light, they both come with the ability directly in that kit without spending any more money to mount any Bowens mount accessory. You've got the Bowens mount built into the Amaran, and then you've got the extra accessory that comes with the Colbor so that you can add any Bowens mount softbox or any Bowens mount accessory. With the Zhiyun light, to get that Bowens mount adapter, you can either buy it separately, which is like $40, but by the time you do that, you might as well buy the full kit. And there is an upgraded kit for the Zhiyun G60, and that includes a Bowens mount, a case, a softbox, small softbox, and a bubble diffuser for an extra $49 or $50. So now you're up to $249. So that is important to consider when we're looking at the price, because the Zhiyun, if your intent is to immediately go and use these with a Bowens mount accessory or a common Bowens mount softbox, now the Zhiyun light is $249. The Colbor light is now $100 less than the Zhiyun light, and the Amaran is $50 less than the Zhiyun light. And I should mention that I'm often provided with special deals or discounts after publishing these videos when the manufacturers of the products see the videos themselves. So in the description down below, if I get any access to any special deals or I know about any discounts that I didn't at the time of filming the video, I will put those details down below. So make sure you check that out before you click off the video, because there might be some additional cost savings there. The other thing I've been asked about was fan noise, and the G60 and the CL60 had the same sort of level of noise when you got your ear within sort of 6 inches of the fan itself. You got about a 30 decibel noise, which is about the equivalent of a whisper. So as long as you don't have a microphone right next to the fan, within a few inches of the fan, you're not going to hear that at all. The Amaran 60s XS was a little bit louder at 35 decibels, but it was still very, very quiet. And in any normal situation, I think the fan is so quiet that it's going to be completely irrelevant. So they are all more than quiet enough in any normal shooting situation, even the most quiet shooting situation, that I don't think it's going to be an issue. The next thing I want to talk about is the interface on these three lights. Just having a look at the Zhiyun light, it is a very, very simple interface. It has a soft on and off power button, so you push that down, hold it down for a few seconds, and the light comes on. It does take the light a few seconds to come on, and you do have to hold the power button for a little bit longer than you might like to. And then you've got control of the dimming, or how bright it is, and the color temperature with these two knobs. That's it. It is an extremely simple interface. You've got the two knobs and the on and off. It really is quite easy to use. I have no problems with it, but I don't think it is the most sophisticated interface either. Then we'll have a look at the Amaran light. The Amaran, what I really like about the Amaran light, it has a hard on and off switch. That means I can leave this thing in the on position, and if I turn it off at the power outlet and then turn it back on, say that I've got it up way up a big pole or something like that, I turn it back on and it comes back to all the settings that I had saved in there before. So you can actually turn it off remotely by just turning the power on and off or unplugging it. So I do like that hard on and off. The other thing is when you turn it on, it comes on instantly. You control the color temperature and brightness with the single knob. You press and hold it to switch between the two modes, changing the color temperature and changing the brightness, and then you just turn the knob. The one thing I do find with the knob, it is a bit funny. Sometimes if you turn it really quickly, it's as if the numbers don't change or you're turning it too quickly, so you kind of actually have to turn it slowly. So I don't love that, but overall, it's a pretty simple interface, and I don't mind it. And I would say that it's probably better than the Molus G60. Now, the Colbor 60 interface was kind of a surprise, and it's probably the best of the lot. And it just has it's just a lot more sophisticated as far as its use and what you've got available to you, but it's also quite simple to use. So you've got your two, what look like they are dials here, but they're rocker switches. And one changes your color temperature and the other changes your brightness. And by pressing in on them, they do a big jump in brightness, like 25% increments, or they do a big jump in color temperature, like I think it goes 2700, maybe 4300, 5600, 6500, something like that. So that allows you to switch quickly without sort of just dialing it up and down. In addition to that, you've got your soft power on and off switch. I wish it was a hard switch like the Amaran, but it's not, but it works fine. And then you have your different modes. So it allows you to control your special effects or CC mode, which is CCT mode. CCT mode is your sort of white color like you'd normally use for interviews and stuff like that. And then the effects mode just gives you like broken bulb or sort of flashing TV or lightning. And then rate allows you to change the special effects mode and how the flashing is. And then set is like an enter key that allows you to sort of set and save different settings. So it is a far more sophisticated interface than the other two, but I also find it's probably the easiest and most intuitive to use, which I really liked and I think is really good for beginners as well. The other thing I should mention about the Colbor light while we're here is the Nato rails. It does have the ability to attach any sort of Nato rail accessory on it. It's a very simple way to attach things. You can actually join the lights together, so you can take multiple of these lights and sort of put them all together. And the other thing I should mention while I'm here is how good the light stand mount is for the CL60 compared to the other two. You just have this Nato rail accessory that slides in. You turn that, and that is going nowhere. It is in there so firmly. In addition to that, I find that I don't get any slippage with the control yoke here. This is actually better than the other two as far as strength and using sort of bigger boxes and stuff. So I think the control arm, or sort of your mount for your light stand, is probably the best on the Colbor. One thing that I really don't like about the one on the Amaran, and I think this is genuinely a terrible design, is you have to twist this thing on like this. But then once you've got it in there, depending on what you're doing, if it's on a light stand kind of sideways or you sort of got it up in the air, it can actually twist and come off. So I find this super dicky, and I also find that this yoke doesn't hold very well. I find it has a tendency to slip. So it's not great. It's probably the worst of all of them, this kind of, and it's really a pretty clumsy setup as well. And then obviously with the G60, as I said earlier, you've got this unit, which works well enough. But once again, I probably wouldn't trust it with like a really big softbox setup. So I actually think when I look at that, using for sort of a big softbox and the yoke configuration, I think the CL60 is probably the best of the three of them. The next thing we need to talk about is the quality and color of the light, particularly when it comes to skin tones, because in the past, this used to be a thing. Cheap lights would give you these horrible, sort of improper skin tones. And in a recent video I published, somebody said, oh, I needed to do the skin tone test because the Amaran was going to be so much better than the other lights, and I didn't demonstrate that, so it wasn't fair, and that's what the Amaran was really good at. And in the specifications that all the manufacturers list, Amaran does list their light as being just nominally like 1% more color accurate than the other two. Now, in real world results, I had never seen a difference between any of these budget lights. They all look pretty much the same to me. But because of that comment, I did take these and I just set up a softbox. I did a custom white balance with a white balance card with all three of them. And what I found was they essentially all balanced out to the exact same white balance, and the images looked identical. They were really virtually indistinguishable from each other. And the only differences I might notice would probably relate to just where I had things positioned as far as the softbox go in the exact direction, or whether I nailed exposure on that shot, because I had to manually adjust the lighting and try to sort of match them all up. So I found any difference between the three was more environmental and settings. And as far as the quality of the skin tones and the quality of the color you're going to get out of these three, they are so close to each other that it's a completely irrelevant part of the decision-making process. So ultimately, I have to ask, which is the best for who? Well, to start with, I think if you are looking for a portable light and you want the most portable light by far, and you're not going to be using Bowens mount accessories when you're traveling, then I think the Zhiyun light is your light. It's a great fill light. It's a great bounce light. It's a great run and gun light. You can use your power delivery plug from your computer. You can use power delivery from a battery bank. So I think that is really the ultimate in portability. When we start adding soft boxes, this is where the Colbor comes into play, because it is still small. It is still quite small, packs down quite small. And if you have a look at the accessory there and this there, this is what we're dealing with. And now we've got a travel light that can also use soft boxes. This works out smaller in total, I think, or thereabouts, than the Zhiyun light, particularly just because it has this extra long setup here. So I think if you're going to be traveling and using a Bowens mount, then I do really like the Colbor light, and it's also all metal. So I think that is a huge advantage. It's going to be more robust and probably last a bit longer. And it's also, well, if you're using a Bowens mount, it's $100 cheaper than the Zhiyun light. And if you're not using a Bowens mount, it's $50 cheaper. And then we have a look at the Amaran light. So who would go with the Amaran light? Well, Amaran is a wonderful company, a trusted brand. And the nice thing about Amaran is you've got a whole ecosystem of lights that have reasonable color matching. So I think if you are in the Amaran system, or you're looking to get a whole bunch of lights to color match, then it probably is worth sort of paying the little bit extra for the Amaran. But honestly, the results, particularly if you're looking for your first light, there is going to be really no noticeable difference as far as the quality of the light. You're paying $50 less for the Colbor, and you're getting a more portable setup with an all-metal body. So I think in that case, it really is hard to make an argument for the Amaran when you see that everything that the Colbor light brings. Now, there's a lot more to lighting than just buying a good light. And I've just thrown a video on screen now, and this is how I turned a storage room, an ugly storage room space, into a cool YouTube studio backdrop. So if you're thinking about making YouTube videos and you're just not even sure where the heck you're going to do it, then maybe check out that video.